discussing how contractors can finish strong and finish well when they decide to exit their business. This is the Contractor Succession Podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Contractor Succession Podcast, where our focus is on helping contractors finish strong and finish well when they decide to exit their business. However, we also work with contractors and many other folks so that they can build their business, so they can enjoy it while they're building it, and it can be valuable when they decide to exit. My partner in contractor succession, Mr. Scott Good, could not join us again today for a bunch of reasons. He's going to be very depressed not being able to join us on this discussion with my good friend, Ari Weinzweig. Ari, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you, Marty. Happy to be here.
Well, we've been on many shows together and different podcasts. Now you're on the Contractor Succession Podcast because what you have to say is very valuable for our audience, and we're going to talk about something specific. Let me do the quick introduction. Ari Weinzweig is a founding partner in Zingerman's Deli and the Zingerman's community of businesses. They are all based in Ann Arbor, Michigan. I could go on for 15 minutes about Ari's background. I'm not going to do that. A lot of it will reveal itself as we talk. Ari, I think the place to start is tell us what the Zingerman's community of businesses are.
Absolutely, sir. I'll give you my best rendition, or Ted Owenby from the Southern Foodways Alliance, the professor there, always says origin stories are always disputed. So I'm sure if you were to have my co-founding partner Paul on, his version would be slightly different. But whatever, he's not here.
We'll go with yours today.
We'll go with mine. It's the only one you're going to get today. So let me back up a little more. I'm from Chicago. I came to Ann Arbor to go to University of Michigan. I studied Russian history, particular focus on the anarchists, very important work. I actually just wrote a piece about history for the e-news that I do. It'll be out later today, actually. But anyway, after graduating with my history degree, there's nothing one could do with a history degree except go back and get more degrees, which I wasn't quite ready to do. And I really had no clue what was going to be next, but I didn't want to move home to Chicago. So I decided I would stay here in town. Not because I totally loved it. Now I do, but at the time it was more like I didn't know where else to go and it seemed fine. So long story short, I went in and applied for a job as a server at a restaurant that one of my college roommates was working at. They said they'd call me. They didn't call me. I waited 2 weeks or so and then went back and reapplied as a busser. Same situation happened again. By that point, a month down the road, I was running out of money completely. Clearly, the employment situation was radically different than the one we're all trying to manage our way through right now. And I offered to do anything. They offered me a job as a dishwasher and I took it. So that's how I got going. I have no brilliant entrepreneurial dream story to share. My mother was a good person and a teacher, but not a good cook. So I had no background in food and cooking. I grew up on the industrial American diet of Kraft macaroni and cheese in the box, Mrs. Paul's fish sticks, which come from Pennsylvania, actually. I don't know if you knew that. And Pop-Tarts, Tang, American singles, Jello, green Jello with pears was my mom's top dessert. So that was most of my culinary upbringing. And then no one in my family was in business. They were all teachers, doctors, lawyers, psychologists. So I was like the failure of the family for not getting an advanced degree. So I really just lucked out. I came to love food and cooking. I still cook at home every night when I get home from work. And then also met great people. So Paul, who I just mentioned a second ago, was the general manager at that restaurant. That's how we met, and that's how we got going. So for those on the podcast who have worked in restaurants, the term in the industry would be my background is all back of the house, i.e. in the kitchen. So I prepped, line cooked, and managed kitchens, worked for that restaurant group for about 4 years. Paul left about halfway through that and opened actually a still excellent little fish market here in town, and he and I stayed friends. And fall of 81, I reached a point which maybe some people on the call can relate to, which is I didn't hate going to work. I mean, it was fine and the pay was fine and whatever, but it was just less and less inspiring. And they didn't write a vision the way we do it here at Zingerman's, but I could sense more and more where they were headed was not where I wanted to head. So I was young. I didn't owe any money. I was like, all right, time to do something else. So I gave 2 months notice. Paul, not knowing I'd given notice, called me and he said, hey, there's this little building coming open near that fish market. And he had grown up in Detroit where you could get good deli food, and in Chicago you could get it. So we had talked here and there over the years about doing something together. And since I already was going to be out of a job in 2 months, it wasn't that hard a decision. And somehow within like 4 days, we decided we were going to do it. And somehow 4.5 months later, we were open. So now it takes about 4 months to get a meeting set up when everybody's not doing something else. But we went from initial conversation to opening our doors on March 15th of 1982. The original
Yep.
space, especially in this industry, was 1,300 square feet. Uh, 25 sandwiches on the menu, 29 seats, and then a little bit of also what we call specialty food now, but at that time was mostly just called weird because nobody knew what extra virgin olive oil was or any of that. And just for conversation's sake, since the industry that we're working in today, the building was built in 1902. We're in the historic district, and just it'll make people chuckle, but it was built in about we have some of the early documents. It was built in about 3 months for $15,000, 2-story
Wow.
red brick building. The family came from Italy. They were immigrants from near Genoa, and the husband and wife, and they lived upstairs for many years.
Yeah. Fascinating. So 1982. It's been a heck of a ride, loaded with
Yeah,
bumps and bruises and
yeah,
ups and downs. And maybe the most memorable one is possibly the latest bump. We'll
yeah.
call it COVID-19. It was probably interesting for you. We talked about that a few months ago. Um, Along the way, though, obviously you had some success. I mean, you were up to several hundred employees. I'm not sure what it is now.
Yeah.
Pretty good sized organization and all based in Ann Arbor, right?
Yeah. So our vision includes many things, but one of the things that was informally or not written down, but clear in our minds back in '82 and now has been clearly stated in our written visions for many years is really, I have a strong belief about doing business in the community in which we're present. And I'm not saying that to judge others who do it differently. It's just for me, working in the community, being physically part of the ecosystem, I feel like that's very important. So, yes, everything is here. 18 months ago, right before our 38th anniversary. We got a pandemic for our anniversary that year.
Hmm.
We had about 700 people working here, and we were on track. Our fiscal year ends the end of July, so we were only halfway through roughly. We were on track to do about $70 million in sales cumulative. We also hire about 300 more people or 350 more people for the holidays, mostly for mail order, and then for the bakehouse to bake a lot of the stuff that goes out in mail order. Within a week, we furloughed about 275 people, and we finished that year a little under 60 million. So it had a pretty well. Mail order boomed.
Yeah,
Everything
yeah,
else collapsed. It's
yeah,
some version of collapse. And now, 18 months later, we are probably in the 60 million. We finished mid 60s last year, and we have about 600 and some people. And I was telling you before we started, we're short of about 100 people. So if
yeah.
anybody's listening and they want to change careers, come on over, man. We'll take you.
Zingermans.com. Go there, or zingermanscommunity.com,
Yep.
or Zing Train. We'll talk about
Yeah.
all of those.
Yep.
Um, to get to that number,
Yeah.
you started several years ago what is now called the Zingerman's Community of Businesses.
Yeah.
Give me that background, if you will.
Absolutely. So that started in 1994. The year leading up to that, Paul and I had spent a year of long walks, eye rolls, a fair bit of cursing and confusion and consternation, but continually, as we still do, coming back to the table till we came to agreement. That's one of our longstanding practices, beliefs in the context of what we're going to talk about. And When we finished that long conversation, extended over a year, we ended up with the first written vision that we do. It's in the back of part 1 of the business book series that I've written. It's about 6 pages long, and that allowed us to. We from the beginning we had been committed to keep having only the one store. It's a very important belief for me. Also, is I like the uniqueness, and never wanted a chain or a franchise. I really wanted something that was unique to us, unique to Ann Arbor, and that when people came here from Pennsylvania, New York, Paris, wherever they were going to come from, that it was going to be a very memorable experience, and they would take it with them for many years to come. And we, not something that you could find one in the mall down the block, but something that was really one of a kind. So, but in '94, when we wrote that vision, we wanted to grow but retain that uniqueness of the deli. So idea was to create a community of businesses, like you said, and then to open other Zingerman's businesses. Each would be part of the same Zingerman's organization, but would have its own unique specialty. So this allowed us to grow without replicating the deli. The more standard model, of course, is just open more and more of the same thing. This was the idea to open in other fields, so all in the food world, but baking, mail order, et cetera. And then we wanted managing partners who owned part of that business and had a passion for what it did in that business. And long story short, so today we have the mail order is certainly grown to be the biggest. The bakehouse, the deli, of course, still at the core. Zing Train, you mentioned, is our little training business. We have a coffee roasting, a candy making, a creamery where we make fresh cheese and gelato. Miss Kim is a little regional food Korean restaurant. It's awesome. We have a catering and events, 1830s barn and farmhouse. On this podcast, I'll say it did win Barn of the Year after its renovation, Michigan Barn of the Year. I know a lot of people were anxious about that this year, who would win. But anyway, we do weddings and events, not a good business to be in during a pandemic. And then we have a little food tour business, which is even worse business to be in during a pandemic. And then Zingerman's Roadhouse is a sit-down restaurant with all regional American food, beer, wine, et cetera. So
Yeah.
that's what we got going.
Well, I want to make sure that everybody knows that business people from all over the country, quite frankly, he can validate this, but from different parts of the world, actually are trained with and through Ari and his staff at Zing Train. They come for training on talk about his business model, talk about visioning, talking about lean, talking about open book management, all the kinds of things that you can find when you go for that kind of stuff. Maybe zingtrain.com, Z-I-N-G, zingtrain.com is probably the best place to learn about that. Again, I'm going to keep mentioning the different sites. You should subscribe to his newsletter, folks. Why do I have Ari Weinzweig, who is in the food business, we'll call it the food business. He's a foodie. Why do I have him on Contractor Succession? Well, because there is an incredible amount of similarities in the industries. Obviously, different things, but the people, the talent, how you recruit, how you manage, there's should be a lot of similarities. I hold Zingerman's in high steed, if you will. I admit to Ari that I steal his ideas as liberally as I can. I share them with my clients and friends, etc. So that was the setup, I guess, for I think it's your latest pamphlet, or maybe Bottom Line Change might be the latest pamphlet, but Statement of Beliefs.
Yeah.
This is what it looks like.
Yeah.
Statement of Beliefs.
I have one
The
too.
There you go. The subtitle is "What We Believe Alters What Happens at Work Every Day." So you probably have to tell us, how did you and your organization get to the point where you wanted to actually write these things down? So maybe tell us how you got there.
I would be happy to tell you. So
That's why you're here, man.
it starts with this book, The Power of Beliefs in Business. You got that too.
I can match you.
We
Ari, I
both
can
have
match you.
beards, and I'm not wearing my glasses, but we both have those too.
Yeah, it started there with that book. Yeah.
It did. So that book is part 4 in the leadership series. Part 1 is on building a great business. Part 2 is on being a better leader. Part 3 is on self-management. and then part 4 was on belief. So I'm going to see if I can hold this up, and Marty, we could send you a PDF of it if you want
Yeah.
to put in the show notes or whatever. But it's
Yeah.
a self-fulfilling belief cycle, which I stumbled across reading Bob and Judith Wright's book, Transform. I've known Bob for a long time. He and Judith run the Wright Institute, WRIGHT, in Chicago, and their book is quite good. Anyway, I was reading it, and partway through, I stumbled on this little self-fulfilling belief cycle. And Bob, when I asked him, he can't remember who taught it to him, so I don't know who to give ultimate credit to. But I realized that's actually a good life metaphor, because even though people claim they did it on their own, somebody taught us how to read, and somebody in your
Correct.
world taught you how to hold a hammer or whatever. So we're all the beneficiaries of other people's work. But anyway, it kind of blew my mind because it gave me insight into an organizational problem. Nothing humongous, but just one of those ones that I was trying all the many techniques that we have: visioning, cross-functional teams, all sorts of stuff that usually works, and it wasn't working. And I was really getting frustrated. And then I read this self-fulfilling belief cycle, and I was like, that's the problem. They don't
Mm.
believe in the work. And so they're saying the
Mm.
right thing in the meeting, but they all either believe the work is a waste of time, but they're doing it to whatever, humor me, or they don't want to say it, or they believe the work's important, but it's not their problem. It's the other part of the team's problem. And so when you don't believe in something, guess what? You don't do good work. And
Mm-hmm.
so I started to study beliefs, and it sounds crazy having written all this stuff and having Zing trained for all these years, but I had literally never really thought at all about uh, the impact of beliefs in our work. So beliefs, I don't mean religion, and I don't really mean politics or sports. Those are also kinds of beliefs that people talk about a lot. I mean more about beliefs about how much work is too much. What's a good cup of coffee mean? What's it worth? Uh, how fast should you move? Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Work ethic of young people, in quotes, work ethic of older people, in quotes. These are all beliefs, and we all have hundreds and hundreds, and if not thousands of them, but most of us, me included, really haven't even thought about them. So the self-fulfilling belief cycle, basically at the top, 12 o'clock, we have our beliefs. Based on what we believe, we take action. And once I started to study this, it became really clear that other than an instinctive response, if somebody throws a ball at your head, you duck. Other than that, every decision that we make, including you asking me to be on here and me agreeing to do it, is based on what we believe, right? So if I believed that podcasts were a waste of time, I would never have agreed to do this. Uh, because I believe in it, and I believe you do good work, and I trust you, then I'm here. Based on our action, the people around us start to form their own beliefs. It's a cycle. That's at 6 o'clock. At 9 o'clock would be their action. So based on their beliefs, they take action. And what blew my mind is that 95% of the time, their action will reinforce my original belief. So if you're running an organization and the CEO, probably not somebody listening to this, but the CEO, the founder, the owner, thinks training is a waste of time, what action will they take? They won't do any training. There's no development of the people working there. What will the beliefs of the people working there start to be? Well, they believe there's no future because no one's investing any effort in helping them grow intellectually, emotionally, et cetera. What sort of work do people do when they believe the company's not invested in their growth? They do as little as they really have to, and the CEO or the owner or whatever says, "Thank God we didn't waste any money on training. Look how bad this staff is." Okay, if you have the belief we have, and probably most of the people listening to this have, which is training and learning are fabulous investments, we do tons of it, right? What do the people who work here start to believe? A lot of them took a job just to get through the summer or to kill a year, like I was doing when I graduated college. But pretty soon they're taking classes on business finance. They're taking classes on visioning. They're taking classes on leadership. They're getting involved in running the business. And it's like, wow, this is actually really interesting. I just thought I was going to bust tables, but now I'm engaged. So when you're feeling engaged and you feel like the organization you're a part of cares about you and wants you to grow and learn, what kind of work do you do? Generally, really good work. And we go, man, this training's awesome. We ought to do even more. So it's a self-fulfilling belief cycle. This is going on in all organizations, even at a very micro level. So if Billy thinks Alan is a jerk, how will he treat Alan? Like a jerk. What will Alan start to believe about Billy? He's a jerk. How will he treat him? Badly. And Billy's like, this guy is even worse than I thought. But if Billy changes his belief and he says, you know what, I'll bet he's just anxious.
Mm,
We got a
yeah.
kind of really, complex culture, a lot of personalities. Maybe he's just shy. Now, what does he do? He goes, hey, Alan, let me walk you around and introduce you to everybody. When I started, I was kind of overwhelmed too, but it's going to be great. We're really glad to have you here. What's Alan now believe? Hey, this Billy guy's pretty nice, man. This is a pretty good company. He does better work and the whole thing goes better. So this may sound silly, but I'm telling you, it's going on all over the world. Countries go to war over it.
Hmm.
No joke.
Hmm.
And so a couple big things I learned. One is there's a little filter between our belief and our action, right? In science, it's called confirmation bias. Essentially, we all filter out the information that doesn't fit our existing belief, and we allow in the information that supports our belief. You can now do this with social media by selecting your news source to reinforce what you already believed. I'm not getting into politics, but we all know what I'm talking about.
Yep.
And if you're a high achiever, like many people listening to this podcast are, we actually go find information that supports what we believe. So that's one. A second big thing that really blew my mind was to understand that beliefs are not genetic.
Hmm.
Right.
Hmm.
So, like many people, I don't know, I never really thought about it, but I guess I just sort of thought, oh, that's how I am. Or, well, that's right, isn't it? But of course, it's not right. And we're not born with beliefs. So the beliefs that we have are learned. I
Hmm.
now know. That's why this little learning, this cycle turned into a 600-page book because I kept studying and studying and studying. And there's more that I learned since then. And so if you learned them, you can also unlearn them. If you can unlearn them, you can change them. And if we have beliefs that are not helpful,
Yeah.
probably a good idea to change them.
Yeah.
So, and then the third thing, and then I'll let you get a question in, is I started to look at beliefs as the root system of our lives. Because although we can't see them, they're below the surface. Once I understood that all our actions are based on beliefs, it's kind of obvious that every action is correlated to a belief. If you don't change the belief, you won't long term change the action, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So those three things really kind of shocked me in a good way, and I just kept going.
I'm sure there are some companies out there that are doing something similar or exactly what you're doing. There may be. I don't know any that's going to the level you're at. And what I mean by that is so people of different all walks of life, all kinds of beliefs they're bringing to the workplace. And when you hire someone, you assumed I assumed that you assumed that they knew what you stood for. So what got you to the point
Yeah,
where you and your team said, "Wait a minute, we we have to actually talk about these.
yeah,
We actually have to publish these." What got you to the point? The book set you up,
yep,
but you actually have
yep,
this written.
yep.
So talk to me about that.
Well, it's 5 years between the book and the booklet, which we really did for the staff, but we've been selling it because people want to buy it,
Yeah.
which is great. So we long ago, I mean, I don't know, 30 years ago, we wrote our guiding principles, our values. Uh,
Hmm.
so what I've come to say is that guiding principles are also beliefs, but they're the ethically based ones that we're not really interested in changing, right? So we've
Yeah.
had those for decades.
Right.
However, I came to realize there are many other beliefs that play out in every culture, whether it's on a national level or on a organizational level or in your family system, right?
Hmm.
And generally, those beliefs are not stated.
Hmm.
Like you learn them because they say, well, we just don't do that like that, right? And so everybody who's on this call who's like dated somebody and went to their new potential in-laws finds out quickly that the way we do it in our family is like in my family, everybody grabbed food and ate. I remember the first time I went to this woman's house and they all like waited really patiently while they passed every little thing and nobody would start. And it's not good or bad.
It's just different.
It's just different, right? Now, if
Yeah,
you're,
yeah,
from a nice, loving, dysfunctional family like me, you get good at picking that stuff up. But if you're not that good at picking it up, you just start eating, and the whole other family is judging you as a bad human being when
yeah,
all you did is the way you were trained to work or to eat, right? So
right.
I started to realize that we're bringing these people in. The really clued in ones are picking up on it, but that's the exception. It's not to judge the ones who aren't super clued in. They just don't know how to do this. And so, in essence, we're waiting for them to bump into a wall or trip over a couch before we turn the lights on to show them where everything is.
Yeah,
So, number one. Number two, basically, the beliefs that are in here, so they're not about ethics, but they're important.
yeah,
They support our ethics, but like one of them on our list is we believe that asking for help is a good thing, right? It's not unethical not to ask for help if you're willing to stay late and work, but ultimately, the standard social belief in business is if you're asking for help, it's a sign of weakness or failure. Well, we want the other way, which is I'd rather have you ask for help too often and take care of the customer and the food properly than the other way around. So
yeah,
this is just trying to make it overt and way easier for new people in the organization. Number one, and then number two, I guess in the food world, I've come to say this is basically like agreeing on the quality of the ingredients that we're going to use for our intellectual activity, right?
mm,
So the first one on our list is about leading with positive beliefs.
yeah,
Okay. So if people bring their beliefs from out of work and they like to learn, they've learned to lead with negative beliefs, which is how most of us grew up in greater or
yeah,
lesser extent. They might say something, man, that Marty guy, he's not committed. He's so lazy. He's not even trying. Now, there's different stories that they could tell about you. Marty might be really anxious. Maybe one of his family members is sick with COVID. Marty might be feeling awkward. Maybe in his old job, this is the pace that they worked at. There's a
yep,
hundred other stories you could tell that don't diminish the fact that we need to work with you on your pace, but it allows us to approach it from a positive angle instead of
yeah,
assigning you an identity that's almost impossible to overcome.
yeah. You mentioned the word
Yep. Yep.
visioning several
Yep.
times. I know that's a powerful part of the whole Zingerman's story. And actually, one of your beliefs is
Yep.
we believe visions of success lead to greatness.
Yep.
Wow. Tell
Well,
me more. Tell me
it's
more.
true. So, as you already know, in part one of the book, which is about building a great business, there's an essay called 12 Natural Laws of Business. In part three on self management, there's another follow up essay where I realized they were really the 12 natural laws of living a great life. Uh, it is my belief that all healthy organizations, I don't necessarily mean the ones making the most money per se, but the ones leading a life of their choosing, contributing positively to themselves and those around them, they all have a vision. Now, they may not write it down the way we do, but they have one. Paul and I didn't have a written one in 1982 either. But in our heads, it was pretty clear. And when you only have two employees, it's a lot easier to get away without it because you're standing
Yeah.
right next to them. But all it doesn't matter what field of work you pick. I mean, the blueprint, in a sense, is part of the vision in your trade. Uh, Athletes imagine themselves and envision whatever finishing the game in a certain way, finishing the race in a certain way. Michael Jordan, I grew up in Chicago. Michael Jordan used to say he could see the ball going through the hoop before it left his hand. Musicians are taught to hear the music in their head before they even pick up the instrument. So it's a natural human process, which, by the way, every 5-year-old will demonstrate for you when you get home because they might have turned your living room into a restaurant, and I feel confident they did not pull permits, nor have the stuffed animals fill out I-9s in order to work there. So we all know how to do this, but the social pressures, the school pressures, the pressure to conform is so heavy that we bury our visions essentially under the rocks of anxiety.
Yeah.
And then we forget how to do it. So this is essentially we have a process, which which I wrote about in part one, of how to get back at what's already in our hearts and our heads in order to get clarity on where we're going. So we have ours now written for 2032.
Hmm.
When we get to 2030, we'll probably write the next one because they're
Yeah.
not forever. And it's about 10 pages long. So this is a very clear statement of what our future will be like.
Yeah. And folks, the visioning process that Ari and his team at Zingerman's use is different from most what all you heard from other people. I know you know that already, Ari.
Yeah.
It's distinctive in its approach. It's distinctive in the results, quite frankly, if you follow the model. So we've been talking a long time. I should say who my guest is again, and it is Ari Weinzweig, and he is with Zingerman's Deli and Zingerman's community of businesses, all in beautiful Ann Arbor, Michigan. I'm your host, Marty Wolf. You are on the Contractor Succession Podcast. So, statement of beliefs, how or has it helped in terms of recruiting and retention of employees?
So, yeah, yes, it has. As you know, following the roots metaphor, I have been working more and more. I started in the introduction to part 4 of the book about the beliefs that this booklet came from. I started to think about organizations as ecosystems. And that model continues to evolve and it's turning into part 5 of the book. But one thing about thinking of organizations as ecosystems that's very helpful is you can't change the culture in a week.
Yeah,
uh, in the metaphor, I look at the culture as the soil. So great beliefs, but in an unhealthy soil, cultural soil won't work. You need both. So there's no one thing that a farmer can do that in 2 weeks takes a bad farm and turns it into a good one. Like the stuff that did that is like DDT and turned out to not be that great, said with respect for whoever worked on it. So these are all small pieces of slowly but surely going more in the right direction. So has it opened the floodgates of applicants? No, of course not. But has it helped 2 or 3 good people who see this booklet and are like, wow, you know what? I want to work there. Absolutely. Uh, has it helped in conversation? Yes. Is it fixed all our problems? No, because it's only 3 months since we've rolled it out and people are still getting used to it. And even though a lot of them have worked here for a long time, they have some beliefs still, not even letting themselves know, that are not aligned with what we all agreed to do. So it's going to take time.
yeah,
But it's clearly coming up in conversation more over the years. The much more people here say, I believe this, or my belief is this, instead of I think this. And I have found from now 4 or 5 years of doing this, it's a very different conversation. If you say, this is what I believe about Billy, or the story I'm making up about Billy, which by the way, stories are just belief made manifest. It's like the fairy tales or the business stories or the sports stories. This is just a way that we
yeah,
share our beliefs. And if you change the beliefs, the story has to change. But anyway, so people say believe a lot more. And as you already know, because you have the booklet, but the whole second half is we went through, people can't really see it on there, but we went through each belief and we gave concrete examples, like, because this
yeah,
isn't just a dog and pony show, like that we could impress people with. We really
yeah,
want to do this. What does it look like when we're in alignment with the belief in our behavior? And then conversely, because we've all screwed it up, starting with me, what does it look like when we're not in alignment? We've all done all of them. And in a really amazing way, there's a nice woman who works with us, and she's only been here about 4 or 5 months. And she came to me. She had taken an additional job somewhere else, and not in lieu of ours, but as a second job. And she said, she told me she had done it. And then I talked to her like a week later, and she said, I want to just tell it, thank you. And I want to tell you what happened. So I was driving to this other job to fill out the paperwork, and the pay is good, but it's not a great place to work. And as I was driving there, I just felt so much unease. And she said, when I was almost there, I realized the problem is it's not in alignment with who I am and with my values. because I had just been reading the booklet, and it kept saying in alignment, out of alignment. And I realized I wasn't in alignment, so I went in and told him I'd changed my mind and I wasn't taking the job.
That's a strong testimonial.
Yeah,
And that's happening, I'm sure, every day you're hearing someone say something that relates to the statements of belief. They're
yeah,
almost unconsciously they're behaving that way. It took years, and I think the key thing that I want to drive home again is that you've taken the time to actually write them down. I
yeah.
mean, there's people who are reading this, and so there's probably people who say, well, we believe humility is an essential ingredient for effective leadership and contributes to personal growth and success. They may not say it exactly like that,
Yeah.
but they're going to say that. They're going to say things like that. That's over time how every organization can change positively. But getting it on paper, I do want to make sure that everybody knows that they can buy this pamphlet. They can buy the books. You may not see, but I have Ari's books behind me. I've read them all,
Well, yeah,
as he
there they
knows.
are. I see them.
Uh, and and so that best place for that, I think, Ari, is to go to zingtrain.com. Am I
Yeah,
right there?
or Zingerman's Press. We're kind of off the grid. We do all the design work ourselves, and we print them here locally, and we sell direct to whoever. So yes, absolutely. And then my email, which of course, is just ari@zingermans.com. So I'm more than
Yeah.
happy to interact if people have questions about any of this stuff.
If they go to where is the best place so they can sign up for the newsletter? Will they always be able to find that?
ZingermansCommunity.com on the right side has a little drop down for newsletters, and they can do that there, or just email me, and I'll sign you up. Or they
Yeah.
can also, you could put the link in the show notes too.
Yeah. I will put all the links in the show notes. I believe strongly in your work. You know that. We've had I don't know how many interviews. It's probably around 10, give or take. Video where I've been in Ann Arbor and experienced the whole thing. I believe in your work. I believe that business can change the world, and it is changing the world
Yep.
in little, sometimes little snippets, as we know. But the work that you're doing and the ripple effect from all of that, and I want to share that with all our clients at Marty Wolf Business Solutions and at contractorsuccession.com. I feel it's my obligation to share what I learn with others. You and I both read and we share and all those kinds of things. So Ari has been my guest again. ZingermansCommunity.com, ZingTrain.com, Zingerman's Press for the books. If you want a year of study, you buy all these books and you sit down with your team and you use them for that. If you want to go deeper, you can go to ZingTrain and actually sign up. I'm giving a flat out commercial to my folks who listen to me and my work. Zingtrain.com. There's virtual training and you have some live events that are coming back, right, Ari?
Yes, sir.
It's exciting. So please don't pass up this opportunity, friends, contractor succession friends, and anybody else who listens to this. And by the way, Ari, you'd be surprised the number of CEOs who listen to our shows.
No, I'm not surprised at all. And just for context, you mentioned it earlier, but the stuff in the books, I mean, we're in the food world, as you said, but the stuff in the books is really universal human principles. And my specific examples are, of course, from my own experience here by definition. But I mean, I'm emailing with a woman in Kentucky that they run a trucking firm and they're using these books for their book club. So
Absolutely.
it's stuff we've had clients from the educational system, from healthcare, from the trades, done a lot with Remodelers Advantage. I mean, so this is all stuff that's out there in the world at large. And as you said, I mean, I've been in Ethiopia teaching, in Slovakia, Ireland, England. So it's pretty universal, and I do really think it works.
You're on to something, man. So, Ari, as always, thank you so much for being part of this podcast, which is, again, the Contractor Succession Podcast. To give a plug for our work, what we do is Contractor Succession is to help folks who are considering selling their contracting business in the next year or 3 or 5 years. We help them move towards that to make their business more saleable. You can go to our website, which is contractorsuccession.com. Ari, thanks so much, my friend. I appreciate you being a guest.
Absolutely, sir. Here's the
Okay.
good things to come.
Thank you for listening to the Contractor Succession Podcast. You can learn more about us at our website, contractorsuccession.com. You can also find us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter.